Speaking of immigration, President Trump made an announcement, or a comment, I should say, during an interview in the Oval Office with Laura Ingraham on Fox News about H-1B visas, bringing in more foreigners here to the United States, ostensibly to fill spots in our economy that American citizens don't want or aren't qualified for. And he is receiving a tremendous amount of backlash for this comment. This is what he said.
There's never going to be a country like what we have right now.
And does that
mean
the
Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
Now, President Trump received and is continuing to receive a tremendous amount of blowback from this, including from people in his own base. And I would like to read to you, in response to President Trump's comments, I would like to read to you a post on X. This was posted by Charlie Kirk in the weeks before his murder, just days, really. This was August 14th of 2025. So less than a month before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He posted this on X. He said, "This is the social compact breaking down." And he posted a graph that showed the estimated percentage of 30-year-olds who are both married and homeowners. And as you can see, this graph starts in 1950 and goes through 2025. And you see that in 1950, over 50% of 30-year-olds were both married and homeowners. That remained through 1960. By 1970, it dipped just to 50%. 1980, it was 45%. 1990, it was still just under 45%. And there is a precipitous drop. From 1990 at 44%, it drops all the way to less than 15% by 2025. An incredible, incredible precipice. And Charlie says, this is the social compact breaking down. We need urgency to restore it. Number 1, mass deportations. Number 2, stop the H-1B scam. Number 3, dramatically reduce legal immigration. Number 4, end chain migration and the visa lottery. Number 5, build 10 million homes for Americans. Number 6, crush the college cartel. And on August 14th, 2025, this post from Charlie Kirk went viral because President Trump's base understands and feels very betrayed by the government officials who have, for a generation now, imported foreigners and given those foreigners our jobs, given those foreigners our welfare benefits, given those foreigners our homes, given those foreigners access to our food and our education and our healthcare system. And the result of that is not just, an increased economic output, specialty workers brought in to do workers that we just haven't properly trained Americans to do. No one, I think, is arguing against certain genius visas. If there are certain positions that are incredibly hard to fill, that take incredibly talented, exceptional people, and we need to recruit from all around the world for that, okay, we can make exceptions to that. But it should be the exception, not the rule. The H-1B visa scam is a scam because it's become the rule. Companies across the country first look for H-1B visa applicants to hire because they can take advantage of them. They can pay them less. They can demand more They can hold the H-1B visa status over their head for longer term employment. And meanwhile, what happens is this chain migration. And when our resources are used by foreigners, well, American citizens suffer. We should think about why those unemployment lines exist in the first place, the ones that President Trump mentions. And the reason I bring this up is because Charlie Kirk, second to none, not only did the president respect his perspective, Charlie Kirk had his finger on the pulse of the young demographic of President Trump's base, how they're feeling, how young men who want to get married, they want to have families, they want to have children, they want to own a house, they want to be contributing members of society, and they can't because it's unattainable. They can't move out of their parents' basement because what used to be a $150,000 home at a, 3% interest rate is now a $450,000 home at a 7% interest rate. And it's just not possible for young men. They come out with this enormous amount of student loan debt after college, which they really may not have needed to attend in the first place. And there's not a job for them. The rate of college graduates who are out of work, the number of months that they're out of work is just growing. It's increasing. How are you supposed to start your life? Buy a house, have a wife, support children, if you have an incredible amount of debt and you have no way to pay off that debt because there's no jobs? I understand. I think that President Trump makes a valid point about specific niches of our economy and production that require very specialized employees, and you can't just take someone from an unemployment line and in the space of 2 weeks train them to do highly specialized work. It's kind of a false binary that's the only option. Either you import foreign workers or you're taking, these blue collar manual laborers from an unemployment line and trying to make them into rocket scientists. That's not really the choice that we face here. But regardless, the reason that President Trump is experiencing the backlash, the reason that people are saying, Mr. President, wait a second, we want to explain to you the impact, the negative impact that H-1B visas have on our country, not just from a purely production standpoint, but from a standpoint of a flourishing society. Because look again at that chart that Charlie shared. The number of 30-year-olds who were married and homeowners in 1950, above 50%. And it stayed, it dipped a little bit. It stayed within 10 points all the way through 1990. It was just under, maybe 44% in 1990. And then from 1990 to 2025, it dipped all the way to what appears to be 10%. 1 out of every 10 30-year-old is both married and the owner of a home. Something has to change. Something has to change. And one of President Trump's best qualities, this is one of the things I admire about him the most, is even when he himself is not experiencing the hardship of a certain circumstance, he's obviously very wealthy, very successful. He's not worrying about finding a job. He's not worrying about paying for a home or a mortgage or supporting a family. He has this tremendous ability to listen to his base. And in this moment, I highly encourage President Trump not only to listen to how H-1B visas have negatively impacted individuals, but this whole demographic of young people whom Charlie knew better than any other Republican in our country, any other conservative in our country. He knew them and he loved them. And he spoke to the president on their behalf. And Charlie converted them to supporters of President Trump, because when young people understand the America First agenda, they realize how much they've been betrayed by politicians in the uniparty on both sides of the aisle until President Trump came along. But in this area, on this topic, regarding this policy, H-1B visas, it hurts my heart because I wish Charlie Kirk were here today to make the case to President Trump of how young men in our country have been hurt by the H-1B visa scam. One of President Trump's biggest missed opportunities, and it doesn't have to be a missed opportunity, he still has plenty of opportunity to do this, but as of right now, one of his biggest missed opportunities is radical reform of our education system, specifically these colleges and universities that set these young people up for failure. They set young men up for failure. The majority of young men in our country don't need to go to college. They don't need to go into $200,000 worth of debt. They don't need to spend 4 years of their prime working age, partying on a college campus versus setting themselves up for real life. But we can't just, as conservatives, we can't just say this because it's not quite that easy to just reject this system. Because the system right now is a pipeline style system where if you reject a college education, then you are deprived of opportunities in the corporate world that might require a college diploma. This change can't just come from a cultural worldview standpoint, because I think that in that sense, the way that parents view college education, the way that Gen Z views college education, the cultural shift in mindset is happening. It's in the process of happening, but it has to be paired with institutional reform, and not small institutional reforms, not reclaiming sanity. And what I mean by reclaiming sanity is we are all very grateful for President Trump's Department of Education and Department of Justice restoring normalcy in the sense that colleges are not allowed to erase women. We are all very grateful that the definition of what is a woman and does not include men pretending to be women. We are so grateful for the Trump administration for righting that wrong. And it is a big thing. I'm not demeaning that, but it is not a radical reform. It is reclaiming normalcy. Radical reform means understanding that colleges and universities are not only academically failing students. If we don't have the type of talent in the job pool or in the job applicant pool that we need for some of these positions, then our colleges and universities are failing students. They're not training them to do what our country's economy needs them to do. They're failing them because they're focused on indoctrination. They're focused on turning these young people who may enter college politically apathetic, maybe lukewarm leftist, and they're turning them into radical revolutionaries. It really is an indoctrination center. And President Trump can use his Department of Education, his Department of Justice, his own power as chief executive through executive order to deprive these educational institutions, these so-called educational institutions, of this power that they have to indoctrinate students. He can say, if you teach anti-Americanism, if you indoctrinate critical race theory and trans ideology and socialism and Marxism and communism, you're not going to get any kind of federal money, direct or indirect, whether that's federally subsidized student loans, whether that's research grants, whether that's Medicaid reimbursement, whatever it might be. Every single college and university in our country, with the exception of maybe like 1 or 2, relies on governmental money, either directly or indirectly. Not just public institutions, private institutions too. It is all tied to a government who wants these institutions to operate. But what if President Trump took this opportunity and said, wait a second, our colleges and universities are failing to produce the type of specialty workers that we need for our economy, and so we are forced to resort to bringing foreigners in. And when we bring foreigners in, it's not just, oh, good, we filled that job. They bring social destruction for the American youth, the American worker, who is not only deprived of a job, but of the house that he would have bought and of the public education system, not focusing on his child, but focusing on the foreigners' children, and on the healthcare system being overburdened because of all of the foreigners that they take care on the taxpayer dime. Maybe we focus on reforming educational institutions to actually serve the needs of our economy, but also our society. And we use the power of the federal government to ensure that happens, because they're not going to do it on their own. They are right now committed to their ideological indoctrination because that's what matters most to them. And unless President Trump shows them his strength and shows them his authority, his just legal power to radically reform education, then we are going to be caught in this lose-lose situation, this H-1B visa situation where really who's the winner? What choice isn't going to be a bad choice when it comes to H-1B visas? And I don't know about you, but I personally hate being in lose-lose situations. And I generally reject the premise that we have to be in lose-lose situations. I want to take a step back and change a factor that has gotten us to the lose-lose so that we don't have to be in it ever. And President Trump has the power to do that. We don't have to sit here and argue about H-1B visas. We can change the system that has informed this lose-lose so that it is no longer a lose-lose. And that it would satisfy President Trump's desire to make sure that our economy remains strong with the workers in specialty areas that it needs, while also understanding the valid and serious grievances of especially young Americans who feel that they just don't stand a chance. There's no way for them to succeed in this economy because it's rigged against them. They can't afford a house. They can't get married. They can't afford to support a family. There's no jobs for them. They're in enormous debt. And they feel that their opportunities have been stolen by foreigners who have been imported, both deliberately through programs like H-1B visa and, of course, those who have come here illegally.